All right, everyone. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Aware Athlete Show. Today, we're very happy to have with us as our guest, Janet Runyan. And Janet has an extensive competitive ultra running background. In fact, she was the women's winner in 2001 of the Leadville 100-mile trail race. And she's also been a 100K national champion. You can get her entire running resume on her website, janetrunyan.com. But besides her competitive background, she's also devoted about 25 years to coaching. And so there's one more thing I want you to know about Janet, and that is she is a great human being, and she will go the extra mile for you. So, Janet, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. And it's a great opportunity to get to talk with you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about your background? How did you come to running? Were you a natural at activity and running as a kid, or what happened?
No, I didn't start running until I was 24. In fact, I wasn't athletic as a kid at all, except in my early years. But I was very injury prone. And so when I got into like junior high, I lived in Texas. We didn't even have to take PE. This was, back in the day, girl, there was no, women's sports, that kind of thing. So I just didn't. And I played the piano. I was very dedicated pianist and I practiced a lot.
So I really,
well, not so much now. Yeah. Too many other things to do. And then I had tendonitis. So I was very injury prone. So I just didn't, get into sports at all. Every time I did, I would get hurt. So I started running when I was 24 just because I was unhealthy and I needed to do something for exercise. And it was really hard and I actually hated it. And it wasn't until I was 32 that I found ultra running. And it was like a new world for me to be able to go out and run and be in the open spaces and go slow. There was no pressure on speed. And I found that I had some natural endurance. So I just went for it.
Yeah. Okay. So can you describe for our listeners the experience of preparing for and competing in, and even winning the Leadville 100? Maybe you can describe the course and the whole experience. How did you prepare? That wasn't the first time you had run that event.
Right. Yeah. The first time I ran, I came in fifth woman, and I realized that I was pretty strong on the uphills, and I worked really. I was strong, and I could even run up the hill, up the mountains most of the time, except above tree line. And I was passing the women on the uphills, but they were just like flying past me on the downhills. So I knew I had to get my downhill running technique more down. And I also really blew it a lot in aid stations and eating, and I didn't properly fuel. So the next year when I prepared, I just took a lot of time with visualizing those transitions, making sure I really took care of what I needed to and not getting rushed. My coach called them the Miami Beach breaks. I just really took my time. I didn't care if anybody passed me. I just I'm going to fuel. I'm going to make sure I get what I need. And I learned how to run downhill really by running with good runners that had really good downhill technique and just watching them and feeling into them.
Yeah, it's funny how when you run with someone else, it definitely changes the way you relate to your own running.
Yeah. Yeah. I had to just get a feel for it, because as much as I would focus on all the right things, I couldn't quite get the feeling. But when I would follow somebody that just had the flow and the relaxation, I feel like I could just imbibe them. That's how I learned a lot about running form, is just, feeling and imbibing other runners.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, when I won the Leadville Trail 100, Jill Case, who was an awesome uphill power walker, she would just go right past me on the uphills, and I just studied what she did. And by the end of the race, I was going up the hills better than I was at the beginning.
Wow,
after copying what she did.
Yeah, as good as you were even learning that quickly.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Because I think that hopefully that'll be a big theme in our conversation today. But I think learning and being flexible enough to learn is really the key to most anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So along the way, so that's also a very interesting thing because you really have an eye for what other people are doing in your coaching. And I didn't realize you were developing it that quickly in your competitive career by watching other people.
Yeah, I think a lot of how I relate to the body is I can feel what other people are experiencing and doing. It's a seeing at the same time, like I can kind of see the lines of force and how they're moving, but it's really a kinesthetic thing. And we all learn differently. You know, some people are more visual, some people are more kinesthetic, some people are more conceptual. And so I've kind of learned everything inside out, you know, with the running so that I can help all different kinds of learners.
Yeah. So the kinesthetic is very important, partly because throughout most of your life, you can't see what you're doing. You're not always filming yourself. And
Exactly.
so the kinesthetic is very important to a runner really coming into their own.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I want to say another thing here is that you are, and Janet, you know, for those that are listening, has a really unique package because I certainly know a lot of running coaches and good ones, but and I know somebody who has really dedicated their life to running form, but I don't know of anyone. The person I know who has really dedicated their life to running form doesn't do numbers. They won't do a program for you, and doesn't have quite the same competitive background. And other coaches that I know that certainly know what they're talking about in terms of their own performance and others, and can help you quite a bit, don't have that kinesthetic sense that you had early on, even, and still have, and that real dedication to helping people understand that it's how they do what they do that really makes a huge difference. So you've got by putting those two things together, I think you're very unique.
Mm.
So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, the form and your training program have to be running at the same level.
Yeah.
If your form isn't really supporting a training level that you're doing at this level, you know, a higher level than what your form can handle, that is a recipe for injury. So you have to keep working the form. And I know for myself that was a constant battle because even when it was when I started doing the hundreds that I was really, I was trying to maintain my speed because I was still competing. But when I was trying to do distance and speed at the same time, I had to really keep upping the level of my form. It was hard to keep up because, you know, you're training at a high level to be competitive. So it was hard to keep all of that in line. And it's not only just form and program that keeps all that together. It's really your lifestyle, your mental mindset. All of those things make a huge difference. And that's one of the main things that I'm teaching in my new course is how all of those pieces and parts intersect, because without that, you can't really be the successful runner that you want to be, or whatever it is your goals are. You know, some people want to just get out and just be able to run 2 or 3 miles, you know, every other day or 3 times a week. And that's awesome. And another person's, you know, a competitive runner. So they have a different set of goals.
Absolutely. So how long did it take you to, you started your running in the 90s probably.
Yeah.
And so it took you, what year would you say you started
Oh gosh,
really investing in ultra running?
in all training. So I was 32. I was born in 58. What's that make it? 1990, 1980,
Yeah, that'd make it about 1990.
1990, something like that. Not great math anymore. I used to be.
Yeah.
um, so
So early 90s, and it was 2001 that you actually won the first woman and 10th overall in the.
yeah, so I always tell my clients, because, you know, everyone expects just to be able to go run because it's a natural movement. And it even took a long time before people were ready to be coached by running, because people thought, oh, you don't need to be coached, you just go out and run. But really, to be the runner that you could be and to reach your potential, it takes 10 years to build a runner. I was running before I started even racing. I was 32 when I started ultra running, and I had been running, and, I was building my mileage and my speed and all of that during that time, but it was still not a dedication to really running. It was really when I was 32 that I got that dedication. And I ran ultras 4 years before I started racing.
Yeah.
And yeah, Leadville, I would say, was my best race. I still had my best time when I was 47, for a 100-miler.
Wow. Okay.
So I kept
So-
improving through that time. There was some other problems that I was having, just in terms of injury as I was getting older. And, I was barreling through a lot of injuries, learning how to run through injuries, sometimes successful, sometimes not. And I think that's how it goes, right? And then you learn from that when you shouldn't be pushing that hard and when you can.
Exactly. Yeah. So just the thing that I hope everybody takes away out of that is that patience is a great virtue.
Yes.
Without it, you don't really find what your potential is. That's one of the qualities that you really, really have to have.
You do. And runners aren't that good at it.
Yeah, that's true. That's quite true.
I call it the P word. It's kind of like, it's hard, sometimes, especially when you can do this and you've done it before. I'll get a lot of clients who come to me, that used to run and used to compete, say in their 30s, and now they're in their early 50s, and they see themselves that, and you have to regroup and rewire and build a base over time. And it's hard,
Right.
Be that patient.
Right. So it's hard not to, as a runner, not to see yourself as who you were 10 years ago, because
yeah. I mean, I struggled with that for a long time, and I still do, especially when I have moments of really feeling good. It's like, oh, wow, maybe I could really, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, no.
Yeah. So I think running form is essential. You have to improve your skill level. But the number one thing of all, as that's foundational, might be just acceptance of where you're actually at. A good snapshot of yourself that we don't usually have.
Yeah.
But a real acceptance of where you're at and where you're not at.
Yeah. And being consistent step by step over time, starting at A, that's where you're at, and really assessing and knowing what that is. And here's where you want to go. There's no way to go and skip steps. Skip a step, and no step ever forgives you that step. You have to just take that one step at a time.
That's right.
Yeah. And it's true in everything.
It is, absolutely. So
nothing new,
Yeah. So you talk a lot about running form principles. I think one of them I see on your website is to minimize energy expenditure. And I think that everybody has some vague idea about that.
Right.
And of course, to reduce unnecessary impact on stress on the joints and muscles.
Mm-hmm.
But that one's a little tricky, because with some people that just means to run very, very sloggy and very gentle. And that is not necessarily the way that you actually reduce strain on your joints and muscles. Better to learn to up your skill level than just try to eliminate impact. Ground forces and so on. Can you comment on that, where people really have a misconception of the right way to reduce unnecessary impact and stress on the joints?
Yeah, there's a lot to that.
There is.
There's a whole lot to that. Yeah, running slower isn't going to necessarily, or trying to be more gentle about it isn't necessarily going to reduce those impacts.
No, you're gentle with bad form.
Yeah. It's still bad
really
form.
gentle.
Yeah. You're still pulling. And sometimes there's not enough momentum, in running slow, that you're actually pulling more because you don't have a rhythm going. the faster you go, there is more impact, so there is that, but it's really about alignment. When I'm looking at people's running form, there's three main things that I'm looking for. And of course, there's, a million things underneath, like that's the main set, but there's lots of subsets. But generally, are you in alignment? And there's external alignment, the ear, the shoulder, the hips, but there's that internal alignment of center line, which is a force that's running between the sit bones all the way up throughout the cranium. And we're rotating around that. So really getting alignment is a huge piece. And then muscle balance side to side. I do muscle testing with people, so I can test, what muscles are weak, what muscles are strong. That's another area. And then learning how to move from the core, really from the center of the body, where the movement is originated, where the source of the movement is. So those are the three main things I'm looking for in running form.
Right. So we kind of got into one myth there about trying to eliminate ground forces or impact. And you explained that was, I hope everybody's listening, it's more important to be aligned right, because if you really, you can even look at an animation of a skeleton walking. And if the animation is done well, you're going to see that even walking or running, two different movements, but similar, are very complex, and they involve movement throughout the entire body. And that the body, you can see, even just looking at the skeleton, is superbly designed to walk or run. Those are very natural movements. And if we're not hindering them somehow, so that's what we want to do. We want to bring the body into its most natural and pleasant state.
Yeah, the human body is perfectly designed to run.
It is. Absolutely.
And if you're willing, we could show your video, because you can see in your video in particular the misalignment of your head and neck and the hips and everything, and things weren't moving freely. And then in your second video, you were aligned and everything was moving much more freely.
I think the second video is a tremendous contrast to the first.
Yes.
And but there's room for improvement there, I feel.
Yeah. I mean, right. We're always trying to master something, and we never can fully reach that mastery.
But having said that, you can show that if you want, because it is completely ridiculous looking. And
are you okay with that?
I'm okay with that, but you realize that what that also illustrates is too much conscious control, trying to do something that's actually hindering what your body's made to do. So right there, I was really trying to, have you ever been to the gym and they have those stands, kind of a Roman chair type thing, where you put your hands on the elbow and you put your elbows on the pads and put your hands on the grips and you raise your knees. And so what does that pull you into? And like it's so I was running like I was doing a crunch, really accentuating the what I thought was possible use of the psoas.
Yeah,
and of course that ruins the running motion.
Exactly. Yeah, you've got to have space between the diaphragm and the pelvic floor, so that psoas can move freely. Really, people really understanding the inner core versus just the rectus abdominis and the obliques. That's part of the core, but really understanding the inner core is.
So that was like 10 or 12 years ago, but I think if we show that would really illustrate a tremendous misunderstanding of strong core or use of the core.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Because we don't want a strong core. That doesn't help your running. We want a coordinated core, coordinated strong core. We want it to be coordinated and strong in the running movement, not just
Exactly.
So that is probably the greatest misconception of use of the core in running, is that you should hold it tight or you should do this or that with it too. But really the spiralic action that you have in getting long on one side that we could comment on. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead, show it.
the body has a natural reflexive action.
It
So
does.
the arches of the feet, the pelvic floor is a flat muscle that's parallel to the ground, and it arches when it naturally contracts, which it does every single step we take.
Yeah.
If you're in alignment, the diaphragm is a flat muscle, and it has an arch to it. The soft palate has an arch to it, and the cranium has an arch to it. So when you're in stance, you're stacking all those arches. So all you have to do is drop in alignment with those arches stacked, and that's the ground reaction. You just naturally reflex off of the ground, and one side flows forward and the other side goes back. So the hips are starting to internally and externally rotate, which drives the whole motion.
Yeah, and if you don't interfere and you listen carefully to yourself, the body's pretty good at doing that. So go ahead and show that if you'd like.
And relaxation is key with that. So here you are, Scott.
So yeah.
Back in the day, at the very beginning.
Now you can see a few good things about it, but you're really going to see that restriction and see how I pulled myself down.
Yeah, and then this is a little better. You know, you were starting to flow a little bit.
Oh, you have that one too.
But boy, your chin and your mouth really wanted to do everything. It's like, I'm going to do this if it's the last thing I do. and there's, you're just running relaxed and much more of a straight axis running through the body, you know, from the head to the center, you know, if you want to see the beginning again. Whoops.
But still with a slight lean.
Yeah. Here you're kind of hinged at the hips a little bit, you know. You're overstriding, but then I'm sure you're seeing all the things you still need to work on. You're heel striking a little bit, but you know, it's so much better. I'd like to see you now. Yeah.
Maybe you will.
There you go. Yeah. So I don't know if you want to see any more of what I have on here.
Sure, if you'd like to show and explain.
Yeah.
Actually, when you showed the intermediate there, that was pretty good too. You know,
yeah.
Showing the progress.
Let's go to this one. Sorry, it's not queued up there. I'm almost there. Yeah, so this guy had shin splints, and you can see he's kind of really holding his feet. He's holding his ankles.
Yeah.
He's kind of hitting downward on the ground.
So that's, you see, with that conscious interference or your image of running, and that comes through your personality as well as your trying.
It does.
But there's usually a holding somewhere with somebody who's needs a lot of them, who's injured.
Yeah. Yeah. And here we have him more straight on that axis, and he's moving from the core.
Yeah.
You know, and his feet are coming and just dropping underneath him. That's the minimizing impacts, you know, is when that foot lands right under the hip line. There he's overriding a little bit. Doesn't look quite as good there. So this guy is totally heel striking, and he doesn't mean that your heel shouldn't land. The heel still should drop down, but he's kind of holding that foot up in dorsiflexion. And then he's got an anterior pelvic tilt. And he actually ended up doing Leadville in under 25 hours. We worked together for 10 months. This is at about 5 months. And you can see he's getting much more cross motion, much more fluid motion. Feet are starting to come more underneath him. And there's one more where it's even better. Then, yeah, and that's where he got to. Yeah, that's cool, right?
Yeah, it is, Janet.
Yeah. Yeah, you can just see more of that flow, you know, the whole body's working together more as one unit. And that's what you want.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's back at the
beginning.
Back at the beginning again, popping up and down, you know, that's a lot of impact. So I'll pause that for a second. Oops. All right. Oh, sorry.
That one's almost a limp.
Yeah. I'm going to stop the share because I lost what I was doing there. Go back to it. Did you want to see one more?
Sure.
Okay. So here, this woman's 50. Oh, she's 58. And her fastest marathon was a 6:30. And she wanted to do a 4-hour marathon, which she actually ended up doing. And the next video is going to be 6 years later. She stayed with it. She was one of those people who did the unwinding, rebuilt her running from the ground up. And there she is 6 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And 6 years older.
And 6 years older. Yeah, she's 64 there.
Yeah.
Yeah, she looks a lot younger, right?
She does.
Yeah.
So you're never perfect.
You're never perfect. It's a constant process. And that's what I love about it. And that's what I love about coaching.
Yeah,
you know, you keep learning.
It's an art. It's an art. You're never perfect with art either.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, I had somebody who I interviewed recently who said, perfect is boring. And that's true. That's true. That's not real. And
Yeah.
It's not the adventure that we have in life. Perfect is not life.
Right. We kind of know that it's inside of us, like there's something that could be better, that aspiration and tuning into that aspiration. And that's a beautiful thing, but you never get there, thank God, because otherwise we wouldn't keep feeling that. It would be boring.
It would.
Yeah.
It would actually be boring.
That feeling is like, yeah, I could do that. That's when we watch the Olympics, it's like so inspiring because you can almost sense that could be possible, It is possible because somebody did it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If one person could do it, another person could do it.
Yeah.
I don't think at 71, I'm going to do what I could do at 20, but
right.
But yeah, there's really no limitations, and that's the point.
Yeah. I think that's what runners, one of the things that's so fun coaching runners is because they are striving. I don't usually get someone walking through my door that couldn't really run. Every once in a while, but very rarely, because most people that are going to come and pay money to get some coaching and they're hurting and they've been struggling and they end up finally coming to me, they obviously are a runner because they really want to run.
That's right.
And they've been getting told things like, you can't run, don't run, take meds, get surgery, and it's like, no.
I was told that 20 years ago.
Yeah, me too.
And then a colleague of yours helped me, and then I had to learn a little bit more later because I had. Here's another thing, you can't change a person's running even if they want to, just by a few cues or tips, because they will one cue or tip will mean something entirely different to one person than it does to another.
Yeah.
And let's say you say. Just as a rough example, some coach yells at you while you're running on the track, lift your knees higher. That's meaningless. Exactly when do I do it? How do I do it in coordination with all the other movements in running? Pelvic rotation, pelvic movement in the frontal plane. What do you mean?
I know. I'm
so
with
you.
You
have to experiment with it. Yeah. So
it drives me crazy. I hear that all the time, lift your knees. And people do it from the hip flexors, not from the psoas, because it's really got to lift from the psoas. So people have to really understand what the psoas is, how it attaches all the way up to T12, right? So,
exactly.
To the leg, and it runs through the pelvis and it's free. And learning to contact that is where you have to lift. That the knee just comes up when the psoas is engaging.
Right.
So the cue of lift the knees doesn't make the psoas work. You've got to understand how to.
Exactly. That is your strongest hip flexor, but it's completely different from using the hip flexor that's part of your quad muscles.
Yeah, exactly. Where everybody gets really sore right in the front of the hips, Yeah.
Quadratus femoris.
Yeah.
And
people usually have an anterior pelvic tilt when they're trying to do that, which you've got to get the pelvis in the right position to be able to lift from the psoas, because otherwise the psoas is tightened.
Yeah, so I think what you're referring to, that anterior pelvic tilt, what you don't want to do is try to hold the pelvis rigidly, with this big, what do they call it, the vacuum in bodybuilding and all that. You don't want to
Mhm.
hold on to that. But an overdone anterior pelvic tilt results in an overarched back,
Mhm.
and that ruins the running.
Yeah.
Is that what you're after?
Yeah. I mean, I could show you a before and after with that.
Oh, sure. Go ahead. Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's another common problem.
Yeah, I think it helps to see it. Google Chrome, where are you?
In other words, you want some movement in the sagittal plane, but again, that has to be free.
Yeah. Yeah. So this video has sound, so I'm going to turn down a little bit, but I still want to be able to hear you, just so it's not overtaking. So yeah, you can see her. First session. She has her pelvis back and her head is way up, so
So
that
what you're gonna,
lower back ends up getting arched.
what you see there is, the very, very arched back, and so she has a lean overall.
She
But
also
from-
has a heel
But from the
strap.
upper chest up,
You'll
she's
see
vertical.
Here, you can
because
see
of that
the heel
extensive,
coming in front of the hip line.
Yeah.
And that's an
arch, yeah.
overstride.
Yeah, and she's really overstriding
And her
there.
after
And
video,
here, now
she's
her
right
pelvis is in the
here.
right position and
Much
she
more
can move from the
comfortable,
core.
yeah.
Is connecting
Yeah,
her
and she's
through the core,
can go a lot faster
and
with
she's
a lot
moving
less
more as one
impact.
unit.
Yeah. So the
Yeah.
pelvis is still able to move in the sagittal plane there. It's not being held tight, but she
Yeah.
doesn't have that rigid arched back and raised chest. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So great.
Yeah.
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 Appreciate that. And I appreciate you sharing those videos.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk a little bit about, you talk about the 4 essentials. So let's talk about another one, the actual race planning.
Right. Race planning. That is so important. Yeah. So with race planning, I think all the advertising and marketing for races, it's inspiring to people. And I think it's great, that there's a lot of activity that way, but there's not a lot of education in the advertising, right? They're trying
Yeah.
to get people to come to their races. And so people get inspired and want to do a race, and that's awesome. But really, if you want, at the same time, people want to improve over time, and so how you sequence your races and actually looking at it, not just from, 3 months from now, but 6 months from now, a year from now, and a 3-year, it's almost like getting, a 6-month plan, a year plan, and a 3-year plan in order to see how things fit together to really move you forward as a runner, because you want that race, any race that you do, to take you to another level, whatever that is, whether it's to improve your time or to be able to race again, or maybe you're going to improve your distance. And so when you look at it in a whole picture, it really makes a huge difference, because I'll get so many people, I keep doing these races thinking I'm going to get faster, but they're constantly tapering and recovering and tapering and recovering and never training.
Yeah.
So the races aren't going to make you faster. You have to train to perform. So there's
Right.
a lot of different elements to it. That's just one. Another element would be people's lifestyle. They're a lawyer and they have a big, huge trial right in the middle of their peak training. That's not a wise plan, because your peak training, you need your most energy. And there you're
Right.
putting your most energy into a trial, that you've prepared for 2 years. So, really looking at where you're taking your vacations, where's the most stress in your work life, and making sure your peak training is in the clear so that you can put your energy into that.
Okay. So first of all, I just love your smile because you're so excited about helping people. It's awesome. And about what we can do in life. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's awesome, Janet. So
Yeah.
you're talking about long-term planning there. Very good. Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah. I mean, it makes a huge difference because people get so frustrated. They want to do the race, and that's what's keeping them inspired and keeping them training, but they also want to improve, so it's kind of like, you have to think about it enough so that those two can work together.
Right. So uh, let's stay on that for just a second. So let's say the person does have a race. It's the one they want to do, and it just does come. Um, and when they've got this big trial prepared that they've been working on also for 2 years. So how do you work them through that? Because obviously, to me, you just have to acknowledge the situation. Yeah.
Right.
So how do you get through that?
Yeah. So if someone's with me and they start thinking about races, I obviously will bring those things up, so we'll talk about it beforehand and I'll tell them. Usually people understand that and it makes sense to them. But if they already if they come to me and they have this race and they've got to do the race no matter what, and they do happen to have this trial, I'll just tell them. I'll say it's not ideal. If you want to keep paying for do the race and have paid for it, because that's a thing people will say a lot too, is, well, I already paid for it. And I'm like, well, do you want to pay for it and not improve, or do you want to pay for it and get injured? Or it's kind of, I'll be honest, but if they do want to go with it, I'll help them get their training in just the right way so that it's the least stress, so that maybe they train a little more before their peak training and then they can back it up a little bit. It's, not ideal, but it's, we're not perfect beings, right? We haven't mastered it yet. And then the next time they plan it better,
Yeah. So, dedication. That's important. I don't know if you want to say a word about dedication or.
Well, I think you're referring to which were you referring to it in terms?
I'm referring to the lifestyle changes you make to get to the goals that matter to you.
Yeah. And I think it also too, it's kind of like where the importance of running falls in someone's life. So again, that person that came to me and they have the trial, running's not in the place. They're not like competing. They just want to do the race. It's something that they want to do. So it really makes a difference where their headset is, with where running falls in priorities,
Yeah.
And so, it might not be the most important thing. If it is the most important thing, then, taking all those things into consideration is important.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's awesome. I know you really stay in touch with where a person's at while you're coaching them.
Mm-hmm.
So what about, I know you've mentioned training and workout sequencing. Do you have anything you want to say about that?
Yeah. I mean, with training, it's form first, then distance, then speed. Okay. You want to build the structural integrity with distance before you start putting the load and the impacts that speed is going to bring. And then when you're starting to integrate speed, you want to put those workouts in the right sequencing with your longer runs. And my approach is generally to create the least amount of stress, but maximize the training. So how you sequence things can make a huge difference with that. So generally, I don't put speed workouts after a long run, right? You need to recover after the long run. If somebody is learning how to train, training for ultras, and they want to have that run that comes after a longer run, because you need to learn how to be able to run tired, that's a different story. But they need to have a base for that supports that kind of training where their body has learned how to recover. So it's all about balancing out recovery with easy runs that have speed work in it, and building those over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about sleep and stress?
Right. I think it's harder and harder generally people are having trouble sleeping, right? Because there's just more stress. That it's what I've been hearing anyway. And a lot of that is, stress takes energy away, right? There is the stress load that actually makes you stronger. So stress is necessary. But at the same time, if we're overly stressed and have a lifestyle, and then we're going crazy from one thing to the next, and we barely even have time to get our runs in, and we're just rushing around, you're exhausted at the end of the day. And then people don't fuel the way that they might need to fuel, and then you're not sleeping well. So overall, you're not recovering, you're not replenishing. You have to have that with running, because one of the biggest resources we have as a human being and as a runner is energy. So you have to have the energy. So how you live your life is hugely important.
Yeah, and I find that the American lifestyle, my work experience was that, you don't necessarily finish a workday feeling energized.
Right.
And you made a distinction there between the good kind of stress, which we've got to have, that anxiety you feel before you tackle it, get on the starting line somewhere and you say, what am I doing here?
Right, right.
But it's still
Why am I doing this?
yeah, it's still exciting though.
Yeah.
It's something you wanted to do. Or when you come home from a day at work, you may feel more torn down than built up.
Yeah.
So that's over time, I think that's the bad kind of stress, and even influences, I think, your blood sugar, because most jobs, it's a joke saying that you have a break time. You don't have a break time.
Right. And you have to have breaks.
Yeah,
You
you
have,
do.
the
Because
body can't keep just going and going and going. Transitions are key.
Yeah.
Just taking a little space between activities can really help to like just settle the energy down and then move consciously into the next activity.
Yeah, so I think even stress is playing a factor in the general American health picture, and
Mhm.
even in diabetes, because your rest and digest parasympathetic system does not work when you're constantly going. You don't take that time to have a breath, to stop for a second, so your circulation can catch up with
Yeah.
with your eating and so on. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's
It's not just what you eat, it's how you eat, right?
yeah, and it is the exactly, it is how you eat too.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it is the feeling of there always can be a feeling at work of do more, do more, do more. You're not good enough.
Mhm.
That is a tearing down feeling rather than a. So yeah,
Yeah.
managing stress, I think, is really really critical.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is.
I hope I didn't go off on that too much, but yeah, it's very
No, it's huge. It's huge. I'm totally in agreement with you for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
I know it's a constant process too, right? I mean, it's,
it is. I think
I'm a type A personality and I want to go, 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 go and do. And I have to constantly, pull the reins in and just go, that doesn't have to get done today.
Yeah.
It really doesn't. It's so hard.
it is. It is. Or to give yourself credit for what you did get done today. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
pretty good.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah. I
even
mean, I think that's a huge thing with my runners too, is just learning how to take in every step you take. It's just, that's so important, and that's a big piece, mental barriers. One of the main cornerstones that I think, there's running form, training essentials, what you need to know about your training, the mental barriers and the lifestyle. And those four pieces are just so key. And that's why I wanted to start teaching that course,
yeah, I love that.
So
So the light in your eyes there. But
the reflection in the glasses.
it could be just that. Yeah. So where do we go from there? What is another essential that you'd like to talk about? We talked about stress. I think being kind to yourself is a major thing. Being kind to yourself while you are working. And
Yeah.
after you work and you say, yeah, and give yourself the reward of self-acknowledgement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think sometimes too with running and runners that are really struggling, they say they're in a slump and everything just is not feeling good, or they're injured. It's so hard when you're injured not to be down on yourself. and feel like it's never going to change. And what did I do wrong? And so much of what I'm trying to teach my runners with injuries, because I've been through it. I've had about every injury in the book. In fact, when I first started coaching, that's why people came to me, was because I had been learning how to run through injuries by working on my form. And if I didn't have an injury that they had, sure enough, I would go out the next day and I'd start running, and there it would be. And I'd be like, I wasn't asking that I get the injury. I was trying to help you with your injury. And sure enough, I would figure out what to do, and then I would know what to tell them. But literally, I've had so many injuries. And to this day, it's still hard when little niggles come up or this or that. But I have gotten a lot better at just kind of like going, okay, this is just another thing that I can learn from this. And I'm going to get deeper into my own body, and I'm going to have more to teach my clients in terms of really understanding how things work, and, how to soften, how to relax, how to get the movement right. And I just go, okay, I'm going to keep learning. That's what we're here for.
Right. Or where was I getting in my own way? Where was I interfering with myself? What was I thinking? What mood was I in when that happened?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the getting in your own way, you've mentioned that a couple times. That's so big. Our brains want to try to figure it all out rather than feeling into, and we do have to use our minds, and direct our energy and all of
Yep.
that. You can certainly overwork it, and then nothing's working right. I've done that.
Right. So before we move on, then I like what you said about I would figure it out, and then you mentioned by getting deeper into your own body, and that's actually how you do it.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say, in terms of form work and helping people with their form, that learning how to deeply body sense is the most essential piece. And I teach breathing exercises for people too, to really get inside. I use those breath pillows, with the weighted pillow, so they can kind of tactily feel like what's going on, where's the space inside, because that is just so important in order to be able to change, a movement pattern or anything, is to slow down and really sense where your body is and what little shift. And I would say it's those little teeny tiny, more subtle shifts that are more powerful. And when people experience those, and then when they get up and go run with some simple cues, their running is transformed, literally. And I feel that in my own body.
Right.
Yeah.
Very simple. Don't try too hard about making the change. Visualize it, observe it, and that's already powerful enough to change it.
Yeah, for sure.
So we want to get into your course, but I want to relate my experience when I first came to you. If you haven't already been able to tell, what I knew about you was probably from your website and your resume and so on. So I was rather intimidated, because here I am, just a regular guy, and I was running, and I run for 2 or 3 hours, and but just for my own benefit, pretty much. And here you have this impressive background. So I was intimidated. I don't know if I want to go talk to her or not. But if you haven't been able to tell already, Janet is a she's very professional, but she's also very approachable. And she'll go the extra mile for you. And so don't be intimidated. Come and spend some time with her. Yeah. Because she understands, everybody doesn't want to be an elite runner, and everybody isn't an elite runner, and she'll meet you where you are.
Thanks.
And,
that's nice.
Oh yeah, it's been wonderful, the times I have worked with you and just communicating with you. So we're going to get into your course, but let me ask you one more question.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you got into your own injury background,
Mm.
because again, people know you're not perfect, and that's very important.
Mm-hmm.
But can you tell me the first people you began to coach? How did you get people interested in you as a coach?
Yeah. Well, I was a piano teacher and then I was just doing the ultra running and I was getting injured a lot and figuring out how to run. And people that I either knew through running or people I was running with started asking me, well, what do you do if you hurt on your knee? What do you do if you hurt over here on your hip? And I would give them some cues and it was getting better. It was working. And then I had a friend who is a swim coach, Beth Davis, who's an awesome swim coach. And she was referring people to me that were triathletes. They were swimming with her and then they were running. And so I just started coaching. And I'll tell you, Scott, at first, I'd watch people run and I'm going like, oh my God, I hope this works. I'm going to tell them this.
Yeah.
And I would tell them something. And I've always had an eye, for the body and how it moves. And even when I was teaching piano, I was just more focused on if they would just play, you move their arms like this or get their shoulder over here, or, I could kind of see it from that level. And I love dance and all of that. But I could kind of see what they could try. And so I just started trying things. And then it just got, more and more that way. And then I started transferring over into coaching more, and I still taught piano, and then eventually I didn't. So.
So you had experience already as kind of a coach, as a teacher.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that little spot there where, if you give somebody a cue, how did you know what cue to give to what person and whether they would respond to it quickly enough that it began to make people come to you?
Well, when I first started doing it, literally, like I said, I'd be like, I hope this works. And it would either work or it wouldn't. And if it wouldn't, I would just keep finding a way. We would find a way. And then we eventually found a way,
Yeah.
And now, after 30 years of doing this, I just look at somebody, and I'm just like really clear right away what's going on. And, there's a deeper level of body sensing in me that I experience when I watch someone. I can kind of feel what they're doing or not doing,
Yeah. So what was it about your own level of confidence that drew people to you
At the beginning.
at the beginning?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is it? Oh, so that's awesome too, because it's an interesting question, and also because there's something that was within you, a gift, and that had been developed to that point, and it just came out naturally, just as our running will be if we learn less and less to interfere with ourselves.
Yeah, you know what? One thought comes to mind is at the very beginning, my first injury that I ran through and healed while I was running was an ankle sprain, which are actually pretty easy to run through. Runners do it all the time.
Yeah.
But for me, I remember that was really hard because I was an emotional runner and I was very emotional when I got injured. And so it was really scary for me the first time to do that.
And that's the way it is with all injuries that
Yeah.
you don't understand.
Yeah. And I remember thinking, I want to do this because I want to be able to teach other people how to do it. And so it was just kind of like, I could feel right then and there, like there's some kind of like path here for me.
I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whenever you've been through an injury that way, that resolved through a deeper sense of your own body, you automatically know how to help other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did that partly as a segue to the next thing here, which is you started out drawing people to yourself through your own experience, and I think through your own gift and through your own person. But then that grew, and so you now have a new course that I know you want to talk about. And the reason you have that course is because you've helped so many people that you're a little bit busy and you want to help more people. Is that true?
That is true. And I also, there's a lot that I explain in my one-on-one sessions with people aside from what they personally need that are general concepts. So I wanted to create this course so that that information is in the course. It actually makes it much less expensive for them because we can spend more time on their individual problems and the questions that they have about their running and their individual program. But then all these kind of like more general concepts, I don't have to re-explain to them. I can just say, go to training one and, go to training this. And it saves them a lot of time in the one-on-one sessions. And then also I have gotten super busy, and it gives me a place to put new people if I can't take on more one-to-one clients.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So,
and I'm excited
okay,
about
so
it because I love how they all fit together. And, that is, even in my own experience, I had some natural talent, but it wasn't like a super talent. It was really having all of those things working together that helped me do what I was able to accomplish. Because I wasn't, just a super talent like these phenoms out there these days, that are so awesome.
Well, there are, but I'm thinking of one phenom who's awesome, who didn't finish her first 100-mile race. I think it was mentally too challenging for her. It was unexpected because she just jumped in and so, patience.
Yeah.
Okay, so, would you like to put up that main slide that you have for your new course?
Yeah.
I'd
So,
like to leave people with an idea of how to get a hold of you, and so let's go into that.
let me Google Chrome. We'll share here. So the Running Essentials course, there's the title.
Yeah.
And the program starts in January. It's a 6-month course. And, here's the 4 cornerstones, right? Running form, training essential, lifestyle skills, and mental barriers.
And I think we've talked about pretty much all of those. Yeah.
Yep. And then there's 3 different levels that I have that you can take. The first level is really like my first 6 main foundational exercises that I teach to introduce running form. So it gives people a good idea of kind of like, an introduction into that. And they're going to be 6 pre-recorded videos and PDFs that they get, with 1 online training in January. And there'll be a replay of that training in case they can't make it. And that's just a really easy way to go to just get introduced. And then
I want to point out that on level 1, and you did go through it all, but I just want to stop on this. For $39, you actually get that live Q&A too.
Yeah.
That's
yeah. Yeah. So people can ask questions, and more what I'll talk about in that too is really kind of like, how would you take this into your running? It's not going to be the specific individual work, but it's like, this is why I'm teaching this, and I'm going to teach about the inner core in that. And then level 2 is the 6-month, that's the main course. That's the one I'm kind of recommending for people. And that has everything in level 1, as well as 9 other trainings, the 3 live Q&As, and then the 6 live trainings. They're live online. And then also a private Facebook group to ask each other questions or ask me any questions if people have questions. Of course, you can still email me, but it's a good place for all of us to see what's going on for each other. And then level 3 is all of that, level 1 and 2 together with privates.
Yeah, so you're actually getting a discount on level 2 there.
Yeah, I'm giving people a discount on level 2, and that's basically here.
And you're getting more out of your one-on-one sessions.
Yeah.
Comparing this way.
Oh, right. So yeah, I see what you're saying. Level 3 has a discount. Yeah. Also, though, I am giving a discount to your people, anybody who watches this, of $50 off of this, the level 2.
Okay. Yeah.
So if people are interested in that, here's the code RunFun50 for level 2.
And I want to also say that if you do have questions after listening to this or watching it, be sure and leave them, and we'll make sure that Janet gets to see them.
Yeah. And people can just email me too at janet@janetrunyan.com. I didn't put that on this slide, but I think it's easy to remember.
Hey, it's simple, folks. JanetRunyan.com. You can't forget that.
I know.
And it's right here in front of you too. So that's good. Janet, is there any one last thing you would like to leave our listeners with?
Oh gosh, this has been great, Scott. Thanks so much for doing this. It's really just fun to talk to you and fun to talk about running. And, it's just one of those things. It's like that runner inside that wants to just feel free and
Yeah.
be in the open spaces and feel
Yeah.
grounded and upright and loose and free. It's just that's what makes running fun. And I think it's the most awesome activity ever.
I do too. And it's just one of those things that's a gateway to a better life.
Yeah, it really is. And for me, it's a personal development tool as well as a spiritual tool.
Absolutely.
All
right, Janet. So we're going to end this here.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Scott. Totally appreciate it.